From deep within the undrained Republican-filled swamps of Florida, this is the KrassenCast, defending what's left, with hosts Brian and Ed Krassenstein.
And welcome, live from our parents' basement, where we are paid by George Soros to tweet. My name is Ed Krassenstein, and I'm here with my twin brother, Brian. Together, we're the KrassenCast, Donald Trump's worst nightmare. Welcome to our first episode ever. Hey, you never know. It might be our first and our last episode if this show doesn't go too well, Ed. That's true. But I'd say the chances of that are about as good as Orange Man Donald Trump in office resigning in the next 10 minutes. We have an awesome show lined up for you guys today, so here we go. For those who don't know us, we're both 37-year-old twin brothers. We've actually known each other for about 38 years if you count all the cuddling time we had in our mom's womb. I'd say we're basically no ones. Some people might say we're Twitter famous, but, you know, just because we reply to Trump. But it really doesn't matter. It doesn't really make sense to me. Every day almost, we get attacked by those on the right, Trump supporters, Russian bots, even some of those on the left who they're probably jealous about our large Twitter following and the six-figure checks we get weekly from George Soros, but there's not much we can do about that. All right, guys, we don't really get paid by George Soros, in case you were wondering. Anyhow, the attacks that we do get, they only motivate us further because it means that we're striking a nerve in telling the truth. That's right, Ed, and that's why we launched KrassenCast, so that we can strike a nerve not only in these Trump supporters, but we want to strike their spinal cords, the spinal cords that lead up to those MAGA-wearing hats. Good one. So there's going to be one problem. Brian and I, we share the same genetic code. We're twin brothers. So we're almost identical in every way, including our voices. So you might have a bit of a hard time telling which one of us is speaking at any given moment. I'll give you a hint. There's one way how you can tell. I'm the smart one. Brian, not so much. Yeah, okay, Mr. 1060 on his SATs. Okay, let's move on. Let's get the show started. So I have a little story to tell everyone. Last week, I was given a chore by my wife to go to the grocery store and pick up a bottle of wine and, I don't know, it was like a bag of Cheetos or something for my son. And some guy recognized me when I was standing in line. How do you know they recognized you and they didn't think it was me? Well, he recognized me as being one of us. But people usually don't recognize us. I think you would agree, right, Brian? Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it maybe happened one other time in my life. Somebody actually recognized me from Twitter. But anyhow, he said, "Oh, you're that Trump hater from Twitter." And immediately, like 5 or 6 people just stopped what they're doing. And they just turned and looked at me. For those who aren't aware, we live in Southwest Florida, which is Trump country. So these people just stopped what they're doing, looked at me, and I'm like just frozen there. I'm like, okay, what do I say? So I just thought of something real fast. I'm like, no, actually, I'm the American truth teller from Twitter. It was kind of corny, right? That's pretty corny. You really actually said that? I did, but I couldn't think of something better at the moment. But it gets better, don't worry. So he goes on to say, "How many illegal immigrants have you taken into your house?" Oh, geez. Yeah, the typical question that many people ask us on Twitter. How many times have I had that tweeted to me? I can't even count. So he thought he was clever. And I just responded, none. I said none. And he smirked like he had proven a point and he was going to leave with some victory. And then I come back and I say, how about you? How many homeless American veterans have you taken into your home? I bet that shut him up. So he just literally, he paid with his credit card. He just signed his credit card, turned away and walked out without saying another word. And everybody around him who was watching us, they resumed what they were doing and acted like nothing happened. Speaking of immigration rhetoric and the fear-mongering we often see from the right, I think this next story kind of goes along with that story that you just told. Well, most of you likely never watch Fox News for good reason. I'm sure some of you flip over to it for comedic relief. I mean, I certainly do that. I kind of like seeing what those on the right are kind of trying to come up with next. I mean, who doesn't enjoy watching Sean Hannity create a conspiracy theory before your very own eyes, right? Or watching Tucker Carlson lose advertisers faster than Paul Manafort lost all 5 of his homes in asset forfeiture. Yeah, well, I like you also watch Fox News just to kind of see their opinion on things. I think it's always good just to see both sides of the scope, I guess you could call it. But if for those of you who do watch Fox News, you're probably familiar with a woman named Laura Ingraham. Uh, she's she says idiotic things all the time, and she points her viewers to our demographic changes, which she believes are destroying America. It's really sort of outlandish. I mean, how can someone say that that's not racism when you say that the changes in America are due to demographic changes? I just don't get how anybody can defend that. She also is so wretched that she's attacked David Hogg. I'm sure you've heard of him. He was one of the Parkland students who, yeah, he got rejected by some college, and she basically made fun of him for it. And then David Hogg actually went off and got accepted to Harvard University. Yeah, that was great. So we tried to get Laura on the show, but for some very odd reason, she declined to even reply to our request. But we have someone even better, right, Ed? Yeah, so our guest today is Curtis Ingraham. Curtis is Laura's older brother. He is about 4 years older than she is, I believe. And he has gone on record. He has lashed out at Laura. He's not afraid to give his opinion. He obviously has different beliefs than she does. He's gone on record to call her a bully, a racist, a monster. And he's also acted out on Twitter to encourage people or advertisers to boycott her show. And he has also supported David Hogg. Yeah, this sounds like somebody I definitely want to talk to. How about you? Yeah, I think we should just jump right into it. So, welcome to the show, Curtis. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your relationship with Laura.
My sister Laura and I, we come from a family of 4 children. We grew up in Glastonbury, Connecticut, in a very, what I would call lower middle class family. And we were raised in a very abusive, conservative, John Bircher type family. Father was an alcoholic. Father was a Nazi sympathizer. And I say that, I don't say that lightly, because 6 years ago when I went to clean out our house, I found a Nazi helmet and a Nazi armband in the cellar. And I remember as a child, when I was about 8 years old, I remember a copy of Mein Kampf on the living room bookshelf. And you can imagine my 5th grade teacher's surprise when in a conference with him talking about what was currently being read in our house. And I just mentioned that title, not knowing what, in fact, it really meant. And then I also remember, growing up and, hearing my father in the basement shooting guns against a lead apron with his Southern buddy from Georgia. And there would be shouts, I kid you not, shouts of Zig Heil and laughter. And wherever you take that is my memory.
Was Laura aware of this at the same time, or was this something you knew about?
There's a 7-year age difference between us, so she was either very young or not even born yet. I think it was when I was 8 years old.
How about as she grew up? Were you still living with your father at the time?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. No, my parents were the classic duo that probably should have gotten divorced but stayed together because of, I guess, there were no options back then for women. So my mother stuck in it and enabled my father. But no, we all grew up in that household.
So as she grew up and she could sort of realize what was going on around her, did she come to the realization that her father was a Nazi sympathizer as well?
No, I don't think so. I think what happened was when you grow up in an abusive situation like we did, the anger, and I call that our familial soil, that anger that is currently, I think, in my sister and was in me to a certain extent, but I was able to deal with that. It has to originate somewhere. And I think it is transferred from from the impact of growing up with a father like that.
I'm sure you saw those video clips of Laura waving to the audience at the Republican National Convention in Cleveland in 2016, where she appeared to give the Nazi salute. Is that actually what you think happened there?
So it's interesting when you see that, you wonder if you were in that position up in front of all those people, if that would be a reaction that you would have. I mean, how do you take that kind of recognition and applause in, but you do not show a gesture like that? How could you, knowing what that really signifies, how could you eclipse to that? That does not make sense to me.
So do you think it was something subconsciously that she was doing, consciously?
That's a good point. That's a good point. I sometimes wonder. I do not know, but it's a gesture that should never have been done.
So when she was a child, do you recall her building walls between your bedrooms with Legos?
No, not at all. Not at all. So I think what happened is my sister, she was a loving and fun sibling. We were extremely close for many, many years. But I think her fame and her professional path has taken her down a road where she has just totally bought into that right wing agenda, and it's paying her very, very well. And so I think she's put everything else. And when I say everything else, I mean her feelings and her heart. She's put that on the back burner.
So in other words, she didn't tear your action figures out of your arms and throw them into cages or anything?
Not at all.
Okay. Do you remember like a particular period where she kind of made this turn? Yeah. You guys have been estranged. When did that start, and how did that start?
Yeah. So what happened was we were extremely close through our 30s. We kind of separated back in '99 after my partner of 12 years died, and she was very involved in our life together. And when my partner died, she wrote a lovely article about us in the Washington Post about how rights need to be extended after she saw what her brother went through. And she was really compassionate. There was this burst of compassion on her side. But then she joined the Catholic Church, and she became more successful in her radio show and then on TV. And she just came back to me and said, gay marriage, not for you. We'll just have to agree to disagree on this. And for me, that was just such an extreme betrayal. And there was no discussion. And that's when I decided it's time to distance myself from you.
So you feel that her career kind of led her down this path and maybe made her a person that she ordinarily wouldn't have been? I
do. I think her anger is being rewarded. And so when something that comes so naturally to you is paying you huge sums, it's too tempting. And I think that's why she's on that path. And she has totally turned off her heart side.
Yeah, I kind of have noticed that over the last couple of years.
I mean, have you noticed when she interviews anybody or is in discussions with anybody, she does not listen to understand the other point of view. She's only listening to get her chance to attack.
Yeah, I kind of feel like her whole listening process is based on her responding rather than actually trying to understand her guest or understand the other side of things.
Exactly right. And I think that is where we really see, at least I really see, a sad lack of empathy.
Okay, here's another question, because I know in, I think it was 2014, she actually came out and she said that allowing more immigrants into the United States would be quote unquote obscene to the American experience.
Yes.
And she's against immigration, it seems, at least that's how it seems when you listen to her talk. Yet she has adopted a little girl from Guatemala and 2 Russian boys. How do you explain that?
Yes, I called her out on that in one of my tweets and in the HBO Vice interview. How can you follow a different set of rules and then come out against something so completely? I mean, it's the ultimate hypocrite. I mean, yes, she does have 3 kids, 2 from Russia, 1 from Guatemala. How can you stand there and say what you say and spout that kind of nonsense when in fact you're living the opposite?
How do you think she's going to explain that to her kids? Oh, you're from Guatemala, I adopted you.
Yeah, that day of reckoning is coming, unfortunately. And I do feel that maybe they are going to reach out to their long-lost Uncle Curtis and ask for explanation.
Hopefully they do. This isn't the first brother and sibling rivalry I've noticed in politics lately. Of course, there's the Arizona Rep. Paul Gozer.
Yes.
And he had 6 different siblings come out during his campaign and attack him as being a racist or anti-Muslim. Have you followed that at all?
Yes, we're very tight right now. In fact, I look at them almost as my new family because they have kind of ousted Paul from the group and kind of taken me on. It's a question where when siblings are speaking out against a sibling, that is when we're in such dire times. And we are in a position now where if we don't speak up, then we're as complicit as anyone else in not getting the truth out there. And so people, when they question a sibling and say, how could you do this to a family member? Well, in these times, where nothing seems to make sense and it's insane. How could you not? It's kind of like a last-ditch effort to get some facts out there.
Yeah, no, I mean, Ed and I are super close, and I couldn't imagine doing that to him publicly. But again, if he went down the path of racism, I definitely think I probably would be driven to speak out. So I commend you on that. I know it must have been difficult.
It is difficult,
Yes,
it is difficult because when you speak out, it's like a whistleblower. There are consequences to it. And so the consequences for me is that my family, my siblings kind of, especially my sister, but they kind of view me now as the betrayer, of the family secrets and the truth. And how could you? So, I move forward kind of like an only child now.
So you don't really have any contact with any of your immediate family then?
So I have two older brothers. I have one who lives in Korea, and I have another in Santa Barbara. And the one in Korea, the family's very splintered. The brother in Korea is dealing with his own issues. And my brother in Santa Barbara is more on the fence. He kind of, as the eldest, was the umpire, trying to keep everything peaceful. But I think his leanings are more towards my sister's line of thinking.
Very interesting. So do you think you guys will ever have a reunion of sorts? Do you think you're ever going to come together?
It's interesting. My sister sent out an email to all of us saying, it's time we all get together as a family, and no matter what someone's saying against someone else, I mean, referring to me, we all need to get together again. And it's like, but no one responded. Responded. No siblings responded. And it's like, that's something you wish you did have, but it's something you don't have because of your reality. Your day-to-day reality is so kind of anti-family.
Do you feel that she reached out in that way because she's worried about how this might impact her career, you speaking out, or do you think she was actually sympathetic?
Well, it's interesting. I think that, there's like a black box pinging inside of her, which takes her back to the relationship that we did have, which was, as I told you, extremely close. We traveled together. We kind of finished each other's sentences. It was that level of connection. And I think in her heart, she misses that. So her heart is kind of speaking, trying to get out and get her back on what I think is a healthy path.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You kind of alluded that Laura is a bully. Was your father also a bully?
Very much. It was a white rage type of anger that he would just lash out at the slightest incident. I mean, if you left him, the milk jug on the counter, he would lash out. And, then there would be the physical lashing out as well, and the verbal. And my sister, she's very smart. She's very well spoken. She has that ability to just lash out, and it's reminiscent of my father.
Do you have any interesting stories from your childhood? It doesn't have to be negative. It's just something that's interesting involving Laura.
I'm trying to think of something interesting. Well, there were some funny episodes. I remember my sister, she had a summer job at the farm shop, which was like a local ice cream parlor in Glastonbury, Connecticut. And she was let go from that position because she kind of had an incident with one of the customers where they were ordering a sundae, and they complained because there was not enough whipped cream on it, and she was kind of at her wit's end. And so she put so much whipped cream on it and slid it down the counter that it toppled off in front of the customer. And so the owner of the restaurant saw her do that and said, done.
I know you've been asking her to come onto our show, right?
Yes.
Am I correct in saying that? I think I've seen some of your tweets. If you could actually get on her show, what would you tell her?
The purpose would be to try and unlock her heart again and get that connection going. And just also to have her face the truthful facts that I'm sharing, just to kind of show her that, there's hypocrisy here. And how can you dance in both camps? You can't dance one way professionally and then dance another way in your personal life. And so it would be just kind of shining the light on that hypocrisy and reminding her. And also kind of reminding her of what she has lost in the relationship with the brother that she betrayed.
What is her response when you request to come onto our show? Does she actually get back to you?
It's radio silence. Nothing comes back. And it's very telling because not to respond, even in a personal email to that, it shows that, does she really want to get back together? Probably not. I think she's so far down her path, this professional path that I don't think I think it's who she has become.
I notice a lot of her rhetoric kind of mimics the president's, and do you feel that that's the case? And if so, why do you think that she goes down that path of kind of having an allegiance to Trump?
Well,
do you think it's just her career?
I think it's career related, but also it's an easy path for her because it's a path that allows her to be angry and to destroy others. And it also is a path that allows you to deflect, to keep people from really asking you true heartfelt questions. You don't have to be vulnerable. It's a short win, and it's not healthy.
I agree. Another question is sort of off topic, but a while ago, Keith Olbermann, who I believe is her ex-boyfriend,
yes,
he alleged that she vandalized her quote-unquote ex-boyfriend's house by sticking a garden hose in the mail slot. I assume he was talking about himself. Do you know anything about that?
I can second that. I've heard that as well. And that reaction, I think, also is another example of anger. And also probably not ever having been, in our family, not ever having really been loved. And I think there is this great search on my sister's part to find love. And I think that's one of the reasons why she actually adopted those 3 children, was to fill her life, which was void of love.
So you're basically saying she's never been loved in her life and she's trying to fill that void?
I think so, yes. Or true love. True love. There's, people always throw out that phrase, "Oh, we love you unconditionally," but that doesn't even make sense. You either love someone completely, or you can't say it's unconditional. It doesn't square with me to say we love you unconditionally. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense to me.
I think it is her looking to actually be loved, and I think she is still quite single, and it's hard to find it.
And are you willing to forgive her and forgive her past and try and get back into a normal relationship? Or is it anger? Do you have too much anger towards her?
So it's interesting. It's not anger that I actually have towards her. It's just, it's sadness, because I've always been available for her to reconnect. I've put it out there. I've always asked her, we just have to have a discussion. But she's not capable of having that discussion. She will immediately go to, we'll just have to agree to disagree on this. It's my faith. She joined the Catholic Church in her mid-40s. So now that's her faith.
Is that her trying to fill the void of love, you think? I mean, to me, it's kind of hard to envision somebody loving somebody like that who spews so much hate on a daily basis. And she doesn't come off to me as a good person right now.
I know, it's funny you say that. When you can't describe, if you lack words to describe someone because they've gone down that wrong path so frequently, the only word you can say is bad. It just kind of sums it up.
Yeah, I mean, I hate calling your sibling a bad person.
I know, but how else would you describe it? I mean, I've described her as being a monster, because who could deny their brother, the right to get married, after you've experienced firsthand what it was to be in a relationship that was loving and just so complete, and then to take a stance against it after you've had real life experience, that to me is monstrous. Denying real life facts.
Do you feel the need to apologize? Do you feel like you had to apologize to people? I know you teach, and do your students know who you are, and do they bring things up to you?
So it's interesting. So the reason I'm speaking out, I'm not one to speak out. I don't seek this kind of attention or this kind of conflict. But in my job, I'm with a very smart group of people, and so they're well aware of what's going on in the world. And so they come to me, my fellow colleagues, and they alert me about things that my sister has said or done. So I get drawn in on a daily basis now to her ring of fire, and so I have to respond. I can't get away from it. So I'm drawn in just by the very nature of her career.
And you then feel like you have to extinguish the flames because it reflects poorly on you.
I do.
I can see that.
I do completely.
So if you could explain your sister in one sentence, what would it be?
I would say that she is someone who has found a niche for herself that is denying her of just true life, true love. She has opted, I think she's opted for something that is bringing her material success, but not heart success.
How about one word? If you had to explain her in one word.
Well, in just what I just said, if I had to say it in one word, what it is I would say she's a hypocrite.
Sounds about right to me. So as we kind of conclude here, I guess before we play a little game, do you have any final words you want to say?
I guess I would just kind of conclude by reaching out to my sister and just, one last time, just kind of saying, why do we not have that discussion? Why do you continue to go down this path knowing that you've left probably the only true loving relationship you ever had in your life? Why are you leaving that behind?
Very good. All right, so this is a sort of a little game we're going to play with all of our guests. It's called Finish the Sentence. I just basically give you the start of a sentence and ask you to finish it. Are you game for that?
Yeah, this is like the Actors Guild. Do you remember that show? They always ended up with asking a few questions of every guest.
Exactly. Okay, so the first one is Fox News is...
No news. State-run media.
Laura Ingraham is...
Unfortunately, a hypocrite.
I wish Laura Ingraham would...
Open her heart.
KrassenCast is...
Spot on.
Donald Trump is...
I'm going to borrow something here. A clear and present danger.
Awesome. Thanks for your time, Curtis, and we'd love to have you on again. And keep doing what you're doing, and keep having the willingness to speak out, even though and best of luck with your relationship with Laura. I hope you guys find amends somehow.
Thank you so much, and likewise to you both. Thanks for doing what you're doing, and keep on going.
Thanks, Curtis.
Thanks so much.
It was great having you on.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
That was an awesome interview, Ed. Let's now move on to another topic, and this is a highly debated topic that really is kind of pulling at different strings of people's hearts and kind of confusing the media, I guess you could say. Is creating a lot of hate, I think, between different political parties and the Trump supporters and the people who are against Trump. Yeah, this is the Nick Sandmann and Nathan Phillips fiasco. Yeah, so for those who are not aware, and even for those who are aware, I think it was this last Saturday, students from the Covington Catholic High School in Park Hills, Kentucky, were on hand at a rally in Washington, D.C. at the Lincoln Memorial. They were there for the March for Life rally, which protests abortions, and they ended up getting in a verbal argument with some African American men who were there. These men were there from the Black Hebrew Israelites. They're a group of African Americans who believe that they are God's chosen people. There was a lot of bickering back and forth where the students were allegedly chanting "Build the Wall," and the Israelites were replying with their own rhetoric back toward them. It wasn't something too great that was going on. Let me interject here. These kids a lot of them were wearing MAGA hats and MAGA gear, right? There were even MAGA beanies. I didn't even know these things existed. And this is a Catholic school, so these supporters of the man who cheated on all three of his wives, some with a porn star, and who bragged about sexual assault, they're actually supporting this man. Yeah, well, I mean, we can't be against somebody for having a political ideology, but at the same time, these people do call themselves Catholics and Christians, and they support a president who just isn't a Christian person. Okay, I just wanted to clarify there. Yeah, so during this back and forth between the Black Hebrew Israelites and the MAGA hat wearing students from Covington Catholic High School, a group of Native Americans led by a veteran, Nathan Phillips, began walking through, chanting, singing, and approached. He actually worked his way, or they actually worked their way between the two groups, the Black Hebrew Israelites and the students, and they approached the students, and he was singing. And initially, the media, I think the media made a mistake in jumping on this too quickly, but they showed a video and they showed pictures of this young man, he's a junior at the high school, Nick Sandman. And you want to elaborate on that?
Well, I want to admit that I also tweeted this video out, and I have since deleted the video because it didn't exactly show the full story.
So Nick Sandman, that's such a cool name. Nick Sandman was standing there just staring, I'd say, like 6 inches from the face of Nathan Phillips, the Native American man. He just stared at him while Phillips was chanting and singing his songs.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't just for a few seconds either. It was a couple minutes, I would say, right?
Yeah, I'd guess that. But anyhow, the footage later came out that Phillips was the one who approached the kids rather than the kids approaching Phillips and standing in his way. But then if you really look at the videos, if you look at all of the videos put together, you can see that Phillips does approach the group of students, but then he sort of gets crowded in and he's stuck between the students and the Black Israelites, and there's all kinds of hatred being thrown. At least that's what it seems.
Well, yeah, and these kids kind of surround him, and they start. It appeared that they were mocking his Native American chants or whatever you're going to call them, in a demeaning fashion. It wasn't something that exuded respect at all.
Well, and Sandman and the parents from Covington High School, they say that there was no racism involved. They weren't mocking the Native man at all. But in the videos, you can clearly see that they're having fun at the expense of this man. And as Phillips, like I was trying to say, as he was trying to work his way out of the crowd, it appears as though Nick Sandman refuses to move out of his way. And that's what kind of bothers me. I think while Sandman may not have done anything over the top or said anything that would offend the Native Americans, his actions, I think, speak louder than the words.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he is a minor, but some of his peers were also kind of egging him on, like laughing, chanting these Native American chants, and just being disrespectful to this man. And yeah, he may have approached these kids, but it was just a lack of respect, and just kind of, it was embarrassing. If that was my kid, I would be embarrassed.
Well, and it's sort of ironic or funny to me that Fox News is jumping all over the left-wing media for jumping the gun and reporting before they had all the facts, when Fox News is the king of conspiracy theory.
Well, and it's not only Fox News, but now Trump's jumping on that bandwagon, and he's kind of using this as an example of the whole fake news and the biased news. He wants to use this as an example to paint basically the thousands of stories out there that show that he was involved in likely corruption as being fake, and I just get a kick out of that kind of. It's a shame.
Yeah, what did he tweet? Didn't he tweet something? He basically, I think he just came out and said, he basically used the example he said something about dreams, like he was Martin Luther King all over again, didn't he?
Yeah, I can pull up the actual tweet here. It was Nick Sandman and the students of Covington have become symbols of fake news and how evil it can be. They have captivated the attention of the world, and I know they will use it for the good, maybe even to bring people together. It started off unpleasant, but can end in a dream.
God, please.
It's funny because yesterday was Martin Luther King Day, and it's almost as if he heard the Martin Luther King's I Had a Dream speech, and he had the word dream stuck in his head, and he wanted to make his own Martin Luther King-esque speech on Twitter.
So while all these people are actually trying to defend the kids and say, oh, they were the victims here, especially Fox News, they're acting like these kids are victims of something. Maybe they're victims of early reporting, and several media outlets didn't get the facts completely right. But it's funny because another young woman, I think she's a 21-year-old, who was in the area and walking through the area where these rallies were taking place before the Nathan Phillips incident even happened. She and her friend walked by a group of these Covington Catholic High School students,
and she was basically harassed. At least that's what she says, and she posted a video showing them yelling at her. They were yelling things like MAGA and build a wall, and she also said that she believes they called her a slut. Yeah, it was someone really. If you've heard this story, you really had to go back and look at all of the video content. Like I said, I posted the original video, and I got so much nasty feedback for posting that video. And then when I deleted it because I wanted to post an actual long, lengthier video, people were like, "Oh, Brian Krassenstein deleted his tweet." I'm not covering anything up. I'm trying to delete the tweet so that the full story is out there, not half the story.
We can't win, Brian. We can't win.
Yeah, so this was an interesting story. I think that both sides are kind of overdoing it.
Yeah, I agree. I think this story is just something that needs to die out. It would be nice if we could have, maybe Covington High could have Nathan Phillips in, and he can teach the kids about his culture. I think that would be a nice gesture by the school.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
All right, so let's move on. I hope that's the last we hear of that story, but I have a feeling we won't. So this next segment is a segment where we want to have fun with our audience. We kind of want to combine humor with facts and just have a good time. So it's time for
Unhinged Attacks.
So what's Unhinged Attacks? Unhinged Attacks is where we're going to focus on various attacks made by individuals or entities towards another person. And some of them will be directed at us, others will be directed at other people. So I'll let Brian get started.
Yeah, this week we're focusing on a Daily Dot article written by journalist Claire Goforth, where she defamed us and basically wrote a bunch of baloney about us. Did you see what she wrote, Ed?
Yeah, so it's really funny. She really attacked us for a lot of things that I guess you could say the right-wing media attacks us for frequently. And some of them are true, some are not. But I guess we can go through some of the quotes she has in there. So to start off, she says, quote unquote, "Over the last few years, Brian and Ed Krassenstein have become social media famous for obsessively tweeting at the president."
Well, I agree with that one. There's nothing wrong with that. Do you think so?
I think it's pretty accurate.
Let's move on to the next one. Quote unquote, "They spend their days, and one imagines bathroom breaks, monitoring Trump's Twitter feed."
Actually, it's called push notifications. When Trump tweets, we get a notification. But if you want to imagine us tweeting from the bathroom, I guess that's your prerogative. I prefer to read about sports. I'm a big Phillies fan and Sixers fan and Eagles fan.
Sometimes I read Men's Health. Usually I don't tweet to Trump, though.
All right, so she goes on to say, quote unquote, "They also published a children's book where Robert Mueller was depicted as a shirtless, tie-wearing beefcake."
Oh, geez. It's an adult parody book, first of all, and it is suitable for kids. We're actually proud of the way we depicted Robert Mueller. His name's actually Robert Morrill, and he's represented as this muscular, I guess, cartoonish superhero in the book.
He is a cartoon. I guess the Ninja Turtles and He-Man, I guess they're all kind of, the creators of them should be attacked too, huh?
Yeah, apparently people are afraid of their kids seeing shirtless cartoon characters. If you want to call a muscular superhero a beefcake, then good for you.
All right, so she goes on to write, quote unquote, "They have passed off real journalists' scoops as their own on Twitter."
Actually, we've never done this. Just because we tweet something like breaking Donald Trump cheated on Melania, that doesn't mean that we are the ones that actually walked in on Donald Trump sleeping with Stormy Daniels. I mean, come on. Then the next one is, quote unquote, "A few short years ago, federal law enforcement investigated the Fort Myers, Florida-based duo for being involved in illegal online Ponzi schemes."
That's sort of true. We were investigated by ICE or Homeland Security, but we were not involved in illegal Ponzi schemes. You know, this is an attack that the right throws at us a lot. For God's sake, Hillary Clinton was investigated for 6 years and she's innocent. We were investigated for, I don't know, a few months, and no charges were ever filed, no arrests were ever made, no indictments. You know, we're not criminals, nor do we ever commit a crime. I don't even think I've ever gotten a speeding ticket.
I actually got one speeding ticket once about 4 or 5 years ago.
You criminal.
I know. Don't let anybody know because we'll never hear the end of it.
All right, so you want to do the last one?
All right, so the last defamation from Claire Gofort is almost no one online likes them.
Man, I almost cried when I read that. What the hell, Claire? Are you trying to bully us or something? I assume this means that all 1.5 million of our followers on Twitter just follow us because they hate us.
It's okay, Claire. We still like you.
Okay, enough with that. Now it's time for
Deep thoughts.
So what are deep thoughts? They are exactly what they sound like. Each week, Brian and I will give our own personal deep thoughts. So I'll just start off giving you mine. All right, let's hear it. It is the fear of differences which build walls, while open minds build bridges.
That's a good one, Ed. I think I can actually trump that.
Trump it? Don't use that word.
I think I can actually Obama that one.
Cool.
If Trump's so innocent, then why does he attack those investigators who will ultimately find him innocent if he's really innocent? Shouldn't he be attacking Fox News for trying to discredit these investigators who he would know will find him innocent if he really was?
That's very deep, Brian. I'm going to think about that one.
That's why it's called a deep thought.
It's very deep. Okay, so let's now move on to...
Did Trump say it?
Did Trump say it? So this is how this is going to work. I'm going to throw a quote out to Brian, and Brian's going to tell me if he thinks that Donald Trump said it or not.
All right, go.
I am more popular than Abraham Lincoln.
This sounds like something he could have said, but I don't think he would have said that. I'm going to go with no.
Damn it. Okay, so he actually did say this. He told the Sun newspaper when he was talking about his popularity among Republicans, he said, I beat our honest Abe. So he essentially said that he's more popular than Abraham Lincoln.
Wow.
Okay, so this next one, you're going to tell me if you think Trump said it or not. His manhood is half the size of mine. It's like comparing a worm to a banana.
I could definitely see him saying this on a Howard Stern episode, maybe like 8 or 9 years ago. So I'm going to go with yes.
You're horrible, Brian. You're horrible.
0 for 2. Great.
Batting 0. So he didn't say this, but it does sound like something he would say. But, that would actually require that his manhood be larger than at least one other person.
That's a good point.
All right. So now we're going to move on to our final segment. I know it's almost over. It's called
Hate Mail.
So earlier this week, I was contacted on Facebook by a man named Jeffrey Allen Shope of Elwood, Indiana. And I think, Brian, you got contacted too?
Yeah, this guy contacted me with something pretty awful, but not as awful as what he sent you.
So his message, and I'm actually quoting his message, so it's going to sound a little weird. He says, quote unquote, hope you kid gets killed by illegal immigrant, period, idiot, end quote.
What is wrong with these people?
I don't know, but, the way his grammar was in this message, if I didn't actually validate that he was a real person, I would automatically assume that he was a Russian bot.
Well, is it not possible that maybe these people are so stupid that they just go to a website and find all these quotes from Russian bots and just paste them?
I honestly wouldn't be surprised if there's a Russian bot website out there that people steal these quotes from. But anyhow, I ended up tweeting about it. You can see it on my timeline. And
there's a nice picture of this guy. Yeah. He actually ended up saying, oh, my account was hacked.
But if you go to his Facebook profile, you can see he's like this huge Trump supporter who I don't think he was hacked. Let's just say that.
Well, I think that's a good way to end this segment and end this first episode.
Wait, we have a few more things to say.
If you like this episode, you may back us on Patreon. We have a Patreon account. Although this episode is free and every episode we ever produce will be free,
you can get to that Patreon account by just typing in KrassenCast.com or just searching for us on Patreon.
You guys can back us, and it would help us continue to create these shows and continue to expand, hire staff, hire a producer. And in exchange, you'll get extras, and these extras you'll be able to have these episodes a day or two prior to the ultimate release. And also, there's all kinds of additional videos, outtakes. We even have packages where we give you our signed book, the one that has shirtless Robert Morrow in it. Heck, you might even see us flexing shirtless. I'm not too sure about that, but there's also outtakes. You get some outtakes, and we make some pretty horrific outtakes sometimes. We mess up pretty severely. We're horrible at this podcasting. I mean, this podcast is about 40 minutes. It probably took us about 8 days to create, 8 or 9, I'd say. Well, anyway, if you want to help us and kind of drive us to continue doing this, we're going to do it regardless, but if you want to help us out, go to the Patreon. You can back us. There's all different types of packages you can back us for. We're not begging you for this. We don't need your money. I'm begging. I'm actually begging right now. All right, we are begging you for this. So if you want to help us out, please do. It's KrassenCast.com. And that would be a wrap.